Greetings, Cap fans, and welcome to another episode of Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast. This is episode 22. I am your host, Rick Verbanis, and as always, I am joined by the best gosh darn co-host out there, Mr. Bob Lucius. Bob.
Well, and the only one available, Rick, so let's be upfront about that. But thank you anyway.
You meet the criteria. Warm-blooded. Excellent. And today, joining us, we have Mr. John Waller Sewell. Now, you may want to rethink that. I didn't say John Walker. I said John Waller Sewell. And he is a guest on the show. Hi, John. Welcome.
Hey, Rick. Hey, Bob. It's really nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And so for those who don't know, John is a member of our Captain America Comic Fans Facebook page. And he actually, he's does some writing himself in the comic books. You may want to check out Beautiful, Silly, and Terrible Things, which is a great anthology. And you may also recognize, as a voice here or there. I think during our top 10 broadcast episode, top 10 villains not named Red Skull, we had him call in as Batroc the Leaper, Leap, and then for our Tales of Suspense Red Skull story, he was the voice of the Red Skull. So yeah, great having you on the show.
Thanks. It's nice to be here and not be stressing my vocal cords too much. Every time I tried to do Batroc, I kept raising my voice. I was thinking I was going to have to start taking hammers to parts of my body.
Well, let's let's get a quick reaction there on just the first episode, because we haven't talked to you on the first episode with that opening killer scene with the Falcon going up against Batroc and his brigade, if you will. What did you think of that opening scene?
Oh man, I was elated. It was always good to see Batroc, and man, I think you guys summed it up great. That was an opening to a James Bond movie if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, it really was. And so we're going to be talking in this episode. We're going to be talking about Falcon and Winter Soldier episode 3, the Power Broker episode, and so that's what this reaction is going to be to. So if you have not seen episode 3, spoiler alert. We're going to be talking about that. And if you haven't listened to our other reactions, we're doing it after every episode, right? So we did episode 1 and 2. We had some other guests on for that, so you can check that out as well. All right, let's get to it. Where do we want to start? This was, we finally get Sharon in the episode, right? I was kind of hoping to see her earlier and a little disappointed. She and Zemo really weren't in the first 2 episodes, but they made up for it in spades in this one.
Absolutely. And I got to say, I was thinking of Bob while I was watching it, because she shows up in that black outfit, and I couldn't help but think about you guys talking about the Mark Waid run and Bob's reaction to her in that bit.
I think I'm starting to think I'm developing a reputation that's somewhat unsavory. I'll take it, whatever.
No.
Any attention is good attention. So,
no, and I'm glad you brought up that episode, because we did talk about it in episode 15, which was the Wade Garney Operation Rebirth, which was Captain America 445 through 448, and I was having flashbacks to that comic book story with the attitude that we were getting from Sharon, right? That she was a little angry, and she had, and there was a lot of similarities too, and that she had been on the run, that she felt that she was left to her own devices and just left out there to out there hanging, and she was pretty pissed off, and but instead of and also, I thought it was kind of interesting, teaming up with Red Skull in the comic book story, and here we are teaming up with Baron Zemo. So there were some analogies. I thought. What'd you guys think?
There were definitely some parallels. I was getting that same feeling about the attitude, and you're talking about in the comic part, she felt like her life had been kind of taken from her, and same thing here, completely different way, but she couldn't go home. She even mentioned in the episode she can't talk to her dad anymore.
Yeah, I saw that. It was great. It was a great throwback to the comics, and I appreciated that. And but I don't know, something just didn't sit right with me, and I think it's because she seemed to be really super angry at Falcon and and Bucky, and hey, those guys were gone for a while,
Yeah.
right? I mean, they didn't really have a dog in that fight for what, 5 years. So it
Point.
seemed like she was being a little hard on him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was seemed a little out of character. Especially because she kept going down that path of, oh, the whole superhero thing. You guys understand it. Like that's like a bunch of, bull, right? And I'm so glad to see you gave up that shield. And like she seemed better. She seemed better.
Yeah.
But it was interesting that at the end of and by the way, she's a badass, right? I
Oh
mean, those
yeah.
those scenes where she was taking on the bounty hunters. I mean, that was some kick-ass stuff.
Yes, it was. You're talking about comparing to James Bond in episode 1. This was a lot like John Wick.
Yes, love that analogy. Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah, it made up for, and I don't want to jump too far ahead, but it made up for that little short scene of Zemo sort of grooving to the beat.
I'm gonna have to come back to that. I need to talk about that. Yeah, but yeah, no, totally John Wick. There was totally a gun fu vibe going on with her kicking some butt there. But at
Yeah.
the end, when that was all over, and then Zemo and Sam and Bucky, they all drove off, and then she went to get into a car, and there was a woman there who was I guess driving. I don't know. It was like, well, who's she? And then Sharon mentioned something to her like, yeah, we have an issue. Actually, we have a couple of issues.
Exactly.
And it's like,
Yeah.
A lot of speculation out there on the wire, man. A
Oh
lot
yeah.
of speculation about what role Sharon's playing.
So I have a question. Let's get to the scene where Zemo and Sam as the smiling tiger, and Bucky playing the role of the Winter Soldier. They're in the bar, and they're talking with what's her name? Selby.
Selby.
Yeah.
Shelby, yeah.
And then Sam gets the phone call from his sister, blows the cover, and Selby's like, kill them. And then she gets shot. Like, and it was like a silencer, I think, And then later, not too much later, Sharon comes out of the woodwork and she's helping the three of them. So we're almost led to believe, well, maybe it was Sharon that shot Selby, but I don't know. Was it?
I'm thinking so.
I assumed it was. Yeah.
I think it was. I think Sharon's working for the power broker.
Yeah. She may well be the power broker.
Possibly, but I got another theory on that. I don't know if you guys want to hear it now or if you want to save that for a few moments later, but
I've got a theory too, John, and I'm wondering if we're on the same path.
I love the theories.
You know what? Let's not hold back. Let's get to the theories. We may have the same one, but go ahead. I'll let you go first.
Okay, I personally think that for the MCU, the power broker is Arnim Zola.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, the whole thing where they show up in Madripoor and you see the power broker is watching or whatever is sprayed as like graffiti there on the wall. Very 1984 kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Big brother is watching you. And in the MCU, you don't get much bigger big brother than Arnim Zola.
All right, I got to tell you, John, I was on the fence, but I've decided based on that theory that I really like you now.
Oh,
Yeah, I think you got. I hope that's true because I think that would be awesome. But let's see what Rick has.
Yeah.
Mine's like if you're a betting man, if you're in Vegas, these are the long odds. Like this one's not likely to happen. But I was very intrigued when they were leaving and they were flying away, and they were talking about Carly Morgenthau. Right. And Zemo kind of offhand said something to the effect of, yes, I am very interested in meeting her in person.
Oh.
And that just, I raised an eyebrow. I was like, could he be the power broker? Could he be like, because he, why would he be interested in seeing Carly? Right. I mean, I know he doesn't like super soldier serum, and maybe that could be the reason, but what's his interest in her? And everybody, if you remember, keeps saying, well, once the power broker gets a hold of you, the power broker is totally after you, when they're talking to Carly, right?
Sure.
And they keep mentioning that, Carly, power brokers, can't wait to get his hands on you. And then to have Zemo say that, it just, I don't know. It's a long shot. It's probably a long shot. But wouldn't it be interesting in the fact that he's double playing everybody, and that he's the power broker all along?
That would be Zemo.
Yeah, I mean, it's a possibility. The only thing I'm thinking about is that bar in Madripoor, where the guy comes up and talks to Zemo, basically says, hey, words come down from on high.
Yeah.
You're not wanted here. And that wasn't Selby that was sending that word.
No.
That was somebody else. And Zemo goes straight into the power broker thing. But, he could have somehow radiated a message to the other. Yeah, exactly. Could have.
Throw everybody off.
Speaking of, because there's a couple things that throw you off. What was the whole deal with Zemo's headpiece?
The mask.
Yeah, what's up with
I'm
that?
really glad you brought that up, because the comic book fan, and I mean, this is the Captain America comic book fans podcast, right? The comic book fan in me was just, giddy. Mm-hmm. Seeing Zemo, the moment I saw that mask in the car and him grab it, and then when he put it on and all of that. Comic book fan, John, loving every second of it.
With the fur collar.
Yeah.
With the fur collar, right?
Right, yeah. Well,
I mean,
he had the coat. So yeah,
but that's what I'm saying. Yeah. But if you add that purple mask with that little fur collar to the coat, it's the comic book version.
It is. It is. He just was missing a little crown, but that's fine. That's good. But the whole thing about when he put the mask on in the episode, how he's just going into this battle or something like that, and then takes it off very quickly after.
Yes.
There's no explanation behind it. Why did he need it? Is it some kind of psychological thing? Is he crazy? I don't know.
Yeah.
Or maybe, maybe Rick's theory has something to it. And maybe the power broker is only known wearing that mask, and they don't know who the actual power broker is.
Maybe he didn't want the bounty hunters to see his face because they would recognize him as the power broker. So he had to put the mask on.
That's a possibility, but then he killed them all. So why does he care?
Well, they're just collateral damage, right? He had to maintain his relationship with, for the time being anyway, with these two ne'er-do-wells.
Yeah. So that whole thing, I got to say, I'm struggling with the whole thing with Zemo's story. I mean, I think Daniel Brohl is playing him great, right? Yeah. I think he's doing a marvelous job. I'm hoping that we do see a crazy Baron Zemo by the end. I'm hoping he's not this steady, even keel villain the whole time. I want to see him snap. I want to see him, go crazy like he does in the comics. But anyway, I'm having trouble with I guess are we all just supposed to believe that Zemo hates superpower people so much that he's going to ride out this thing with Sam and Bucky until that's through? Because he had opportunities to kill the two of them.
Yeah.
And to get away.
Or at least ditch them.
Yeah. Why didn't he? I don't know. It seemed like a conflict. It seemed like a conflict to me, to see. And the other thing too, and I don't want to go down things I didn't like, but the other thing too, I thought it was a little too easy for Sam to just kind of say, "Hey, you broke him out," and then give Bucky a little hard time for breaking out. And they're like, "Okay, let me go ahead and roll around." I
think they were. I didn't think this episode in particular did a great job with Sam. I think Sam looked and his origins are different, of course, in the Marvel universe, cinematic universe, than in the comics. And, in the Marvel cinematic universe, he comes from a military background. He doesn't have a huge experience in the world, because us military guys, we have a certain background and we have a certain expertise in certain things, operational, but beyond that, and he seemed way out of his element, as Smiling Tiger, and he just seems to be kind of, I don't know, lost, with these folks that have, experience in the underworld of crime and intrigue and espionage. He just seems like a deer caught in the headlights.
Well, he even made note of that, right? When they were in Sharon's loft and they were talking about the paintings being, legit, and all three of them were, Zemo and Buck and Sharon, and they're all explaining it to him, and he even said, "Oh yeah, poor Sam, who's," I forget how he referred to himself, but it was something to the effect of, I don't know much about the unworldly Sam. So he even made note of that.
One more thing, I'm not sure Zemo is completely convinced that the Winter Soldier is completely out from under his programming.
Right. I mean, he did refer to him as, you have to play the role that you claim you no longer are.
Yep. And then he made the mention to Sam while Winter Soldier's kicking everybody's tail in that bar. It was like, yeah, that
he felt pretty
a little bit of it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So there may be a card there, right, that he hopes to play in the future.
Absolutely. I think there's also something to possibly be explored, and I was trying to pay very close attention. Isn't there a part where either Winter Soldier or Zemo, one or the other, I think it's Winter Soldier himself, says those words don't work anymore? It left me wondering.
I think he said the old words.
The old word. There you go. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
The old words. So does that mean that there are new words? And Zemo may be very interested in finding out what those are. Might also explain why he lifted that book off of it. That he's looking for clues, some kind of thing. He didn't find what he was looking for, but he still found something that got under both of their skins.
Right. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about that party scene where Zemo's dancing. I mean, ugh.
It was cringeworthy. Quite honestly.
I know. I mean, look, I understand the guy's been in jail and he wants to get out, but you know what? All right. Here's the part where I didn't get. Here's the part I didn't. Wasn't there a bounty on the three of them? What are they doing out in public? I know they went from low town to high town.
Exactly, they went to high town.
But there's no bounty hunters in high town.
I know they don't cross over apparently.
I mean, that just I was like, what are they doing?
Yeah, that sort of rang my bell a little bit. Too.
She told him to change clothes. Don't you get that? That's enough.
Yes. I did find the conversation between Zemo and Sam about a fashion forward black man, just only in America, they would assume something negative. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
I also thought it was great that little sort of brief interaction about Marvin Gaye between Sam and Zemo. I thought was awesome.
He's like, "You're out of line, but it's true."
Exactly. And I'm glad y'all brought that up, because episodes 1 and 2 have hit on the subject of racism very just full on.
Right.
This one played it a little bit more subtle. The whole way Zemo interacts, it's almost pandering when he's talking to Sam. Mm-hmm. And Sam's catching. He's like what you say, he's out of line. He was out of line about the book, but he's also out of line the way he's presenting himself. But there's one other little thing. The manservant for Zemo, on the second time watching this through, as they're boarding the plane, he's like so happy looking at Zemo, and Sam's next online, and that expression on his face just goes to this scowl of just looking at him, and then he looks at Winter Soldier and the scowl relaxes a little bit. It's this whole fixation on this black man.
Well, was it, or was it because he was an Avenger that had something to do with Sokovia, that he associate with Sokovia and the Avengers, so, You don't know.
That's a possibility, but I think there's definitely some race relations stuff going on here between Zemo and Falcon, and Zemo's manservant just doesn't want any of it. I mean, he was going to serve him the rotten food.
Yeah.
Speaking of rotten food, like before we only got that much time left, Rick, but what did you think of that Global Repatriation Council commercial?
I loved it. As a marketing guy,
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, I'm a marketing guy by trade. So I loved it. I thought the GRC commercial was, it certainly paints a picture, right? A PR type picture. But I loved how it transitioned directly into the military van that John Walker got out of, to show, here's what they're saying, and here's what is also going on.
Yeah.
So let's talk about John Walker, right? That scene, right? I find it interesting too when he busts in. He doesn't say I'm Captain America. He says I'm John Walker, right? So I don't know. That was interesting to me. I'm not going to make anything out of it. But then he has a lot of anger. Right. Because he's like, you're lying to me, like almost he expects people to just fall in place and tell him, what he wants to hear. And when he wasn't, and then when the guy spit in his face, and then he snaps, right. And he doesn't just grab the guy and just say, do you know who I am? Like he grabbed the guy, threw him up against the wall and screamed, do you know who I am? And the pressure, you can see the pressure is building up in this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. The pressure is, and it's getting to the relationship between him and Battlestar as well, I think, because he's like, hey, trying to explain to John Walker as they're walking out of that building, it's hard to defeat the kind of loyalty when people are providing you food and medicine and all this stuff. There's a schism forming.
Yeah. I said it like in our review of the first episode that Lamar is the voice of calm and reason and experience. He's a senior guy. They got him as a sergeant major. This guy has been around a long time in the Army. He's reached the pinnacle of the staff NCO ranks in the Army. And Walker doesn't have that experience. He just doesn't. And they're close and they're friends and they've worked together, but Battlestar is in my view, I think they've got a solid outcome for Battlestar in this show, and he's going to be a real hero, and I'm not so sure about Walker.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, because he seems to be the voice of reason, right? So at the end, when they're leaving the prison where Zemo busted out, and he says, well, you don't think Sam and Buck had anything to do with that, which was a little naive. And it was, I guess you could see a little bit of, how smart John is. And when he says, oh, absolutely, they were desperate for leads and, now we're going to go after them. And so, but Lamar says, yeah, we could get into trouble for this. And he's like, yeah, but the ends justify the means, essentially, was what he said. And so I think that was a little bit of an insight to the character that John is. He is bright, he is resourceful, but in his mind, the ends justify the means. And like you said, do you think anybody's going to care if we get the bad guy?
Which wasn't that phrase, the ends justify the means, didn't that come from Machiavelli, which is what Baron Zemo was reading in the cell?
Yeah, I think I was just saying the ends justify the means. I don't think that was something he said in the show, but I'm
just saying as a theme, it's just interesting that that's where your mind goes. And I think that's actually directly out of that piece that he was reading, which if I may, also, that whole scene where he's in the cell when Bucky first walks in, I've heard and seen a lot of people talking about the parallels between this and Silence of the Lambs. That's all great. First thing I thought when he came leaning out of those shadows was Kurtz out of Apocalypse Now. I'm like, that's what screamed in my mind.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. I could totally see that. So we talked a little bit about, Carly. So, she had she apparently there was a mother figure, Donna Madani or something like that, who passed. We assume it's from tuberculosis because they mentioned that's something that's common among being in these GRC camps, and that so she's upset, and so we for a couple scenes there. Because we also learned that she wanted to be a teacher and things like that. So for a couple scenes there, we're kind of seeing a side of her. We're trying to get her story. We're trying to see that she's like kind of like Robin Hood, as they mentioned in episode 2. We're trying to see her as a sympathetic character, if you will. But at the end, she blows up a building full of workers, not completely soldier, military type, but just average guys that are there to look over, and she does it, and much to the horror of her partner, Dovich, I think his name is, and she says that's the only language they know. So okay, game on. We now see that she's quite the villain.
She's evil. Yeah
and justifies the means in her mind, I imagine.
Yeah. So I think you're right. I mean, that was, wow, that really sort of, I think, especially after the sort of the pains that they took to show her in a sympathetic light as sort of a freedom fighter, maybe, or somebody, a Robin Hood. And then that scene really kind of, for lack of a better phrase, blew that concept out of the water. Right. And so that ends, the ends justify the means. Now you have this sort of, the Walker and the Carly, right? And they're both kind of pursuing their goals, and the ends justify the means for both of them. So,
yep. I have a couple more points I want to get to before we end. One is so there's 20 vials out there, and there's not going to be any more now that Zemo killed Dr. Nagel. So with that 20 vials, we know that 8 of them have been used. That means there's another 12 out there potentially. So that's interesting. And who knows if all 12 are going to be accounted for in this series. They may spread out to other MCU shows for all we know. So that's something I wanted to ask you guys about. And then the other thing, and 2 other things, I want to talk about Ayo showing up at the very end, right, from Black Panther.
Well, we knew Wakanda was going to get involved. The minute you started bringing Zemo in, just like Falcon himself said, did you forget that they killed King T'Chaka? That's rhetorical. They're not going to forget.
Yeah, they didn't.
Yeah, they didn't. So, yeah, I'm glad to see that that Bucky noticed it. I love the way the episode ends with him just finding the tech and going back and just calling her out right there, saying, I was wondering how soon you were going to show up.
Yeah, and what's going to happen next, right? Because, not only is that a Wakandan, but that was who was supposed to protect the king. And
that's right.
Probably, not only are they emotionally tied, but embarrassed, humiliated, whatever. I mean, right? The honor has been hurt. So, yeah, I imagine they're not happy with the White Wolf right now.
No, not at all. I think that's absolutely right. They're probably very conflicted about their feelings toward Bucky and Sam for helping this guy out at all.
Or maybe not. Maybe, to get back to your first point, maybe, Bucky has been, the White Wolf has been, communicating with Wakanda the whole time. And maybe, I mean, if you recall from the Black Panther movie, the mystical herb that gave the Black Panther their sort of strength was largely decimated by Killmonger, right? Except for that one last flower. And so they may be looking for some replacement for that ability.
Oh, Bob, that's brilliant, because you got 12 vials of super soldier serum going around, right?
Right. And we don't know how they're going to handle Black Panther 2, if Shuri's going to take over as Black Panther, and how she's going to develop that super strength, or whoever takes over as the new Black Panther.
Wow. All right. Hey, if I may, I want to circle around one more thing before we run out of time. Did you guys notice the golden gun in the trunk of the car?
No.
And when they get to Zemo's
Did.
first lair with all the cars,
Yeah.
before he gets the mask, he opens up the trunk and there's a golden gun lying there in the trunk. And then you fast forward to later in the episode in the bar at Madripoor, there's a guy walking around. You don't even see the guy's face, but he's got a golden gun too. So Rick, that might actually back up your theory that Zemo is the power broker.
Interesting. I remember seeing that golden gun, but I didn't see the second appearance. I'm going to have to go back and check that out, John.
Yeah.
Funny episode, funny parts in this episode. There were a few humorous moments, and most of them centered around Sam, I think, right? So the part where their cover's blown and he's running and he says, "I can't run in these heels."
Right.
I thought that was funny, and I loved when he was talking with Sharon and saying, "Look, we can get you cleared. You can come back." And she's like, "Oh, really? I don't know if that's the case." And he says, "Well, they cleared the bionic staring machine and he's killed almost everyone he's met." and then Bucky's like, "I heard that."
Yeah. I got to tell you, I love, and I love when he's like, "You're not going to move your seat up, are you?"
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was payback.
Oh, total payback.
That's great. That relationship, I think, has really, really paid off in this series, and they've really developed it, and it's a joy to watch.
Oh, the one other thing I want to talk about is Sam says, this piece of metal has caused so much problems, and if I could have done it over again, instead of dropping it off to the Smithsonian, I would have destroyed it. And Bucky says, "Well, that shield means a lot to a lot of people. And before you do that, I would wear it." And that, I think, everybody assumes Sam's going to be the new Captain America by the end of the series. I think this here, and I honestly still feel that way, but I think this at least opened up the thought that, well, you know what? Maybe Bucky will be.
Absolutely. I think you're spot on right. At least it entertains the option. But I also think you're right that by the time the series is said and done, it's going to be Sam. He's going to come around to this idea. I love the fact that this episode talks so much about symbolism and what it means for a thing to be a symbol versus what it means for a person to be a symbol. And I think Sam's really struggling with that. But I think he's going to come around.
No, I was going to say, I think it also shows a little bit of maybe Sam doesn't necessarily get what that shield is, right? Because man, Thanos couldn't even really destroy it. He was able to hack it in half, but I'm not sure, how is he going to destroy it? Does he really know what that shield stands for? You can't destroy a symbol. And the very essence of that shield sort of speaks to the inability to destroy the symbol.
Right. My fiance brought up a good point in that John's trying to live up to the uniform, whereas Steve, he made the uniform. You're right. And so that's really the difference between the two. All right. Well, I think we're out of time here, John. So thank you so much for joining. It was a blast having you.
Thanks, guys. I had a blast being here.
Awesome.
It's great to have you, John.
Thanks. You guys take care.
Leap.
Leap.
Okay, another reaction to Falcon and Winter Soldier in the books. That was, let's see, episode 22. Make sure to join us for episode 24 when we next Sunday when we react to Falcon and Winter Soldier episode 4. That'll be fun. In the meantime, coming out this week, we've got our interview with Mike Perkins. That's coming out with episode 23. That'll be out on Wednesday. So make sure you check that out. For those who don't know who Mike Perkins is, shame on you. He is a great artist that worked on the Ed Brubaker series from 2005 to 2008. And he started off with the Winter Soldier origin. And so it was great catching up with him to hear about what it was like working on the origin of the Winter Soldier in the comic books, and where that story went off to, and other things that he did on the Cap series. So check that out. That'll be out this Wednesday, and that will be episode number 23. All right. Bob, any last thoughts before we wrap us up?
No, man, that was a lot of fun. That was a great conversation and some crazy, wild theories, and we'll see what comes true.
I know. In the meantime, it's just fun watching it all. So, all right, it was a great rapid cap with you.
Yep, let's do this again, man.
All right. He's Bob Lucius. I'm Rick Verbanis, and you've been listening to the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast.